Our next keynote address, we have an international keynote speaker who will be covering global e-commerce markets and trends. To deliver this address, we have the Director of Research of Internet Retailer who has flown all the way from the US of A, especially for this conference. I'd like to tell you a little bit about this speaker. He, in addition to being the head of research at Internet Retailer, Mr.Mark Brohan is also the editor of Internet Retailer's Top 500 Guide and Top500Guide.com and related research publications. Prior to rejoining Internet Retailer, in July 2005, Mark was managing director of the Brohan Group, a full-service business publishing and consulting company. Previously, he had headed up new print and web product business development for Faulkner & Gray, a subsidiary of Thomson Corp. That Mark joined in 1989. Now, among the many positions that Mark held at Faulkner & Gray were the web publisher position as well as the editorial director for DM Review magazine and its two websites, dmreview.com and datawarehouse.com. He was also the founding editor of various Faulkner & Gray technology magazines, including Internet Retailer. So I'd like you to please join in and giving Mr. Mark Brohan a big round of applause and welcome.
I've got to tell you, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having us. It's an honor and a pleasure to come to India to speak about not only online retailing, but where this marketplace stands in the global village of business to consumer e-commerce. So the title they gave me was a lofty one, but I think probably one of the benefits or the takeaways from my presentation is I'll be happy to name drop retailers here and there with some best practices that we've written about and reported on at Internet Retailer from time to time. So one of the things I would like to focus on is whether you're big or small, there are certain things that can set you apart, from your competition, whether you are a brand manufacturer, a cataloger, a chain retailer, or your point of origin was to be an online-only retailer. So the best have a lot in common, and that does not matter where you sell, be it India, be it other parts of Asia, be it US, Europe, or Latin America. So I'm just waiting for my presentation to load here. What the world's best retailers have in common. So, a few quick lines about who we are. Internet Retailer has been around since 1999. We are the only existing publisher that I know with 13 full-time editors, writers, reporters that cover online retail. So we have a lot of reporters that talk to retailers of all sizes on all topics every day on a lot of fronts. We also have a fairly extensive 6-editor research department that I head up, and what we do is we work with our editors. We talk to retailers ourselves pretty much all day, every day, and then we partner with various data partners around the world, and we actually rank online retailers beginning 10 years ago in North America on the core metric that still counts, which is annual web sales. And we go into other aspects of online retailing sites from there. And the last 3 to 4 years, we've been expanding our business model to first initially rank the largest online retailers in Europe. Last September, we ranked the biggest online retailers in Latin America for the very first time. And we're kind of excited. We are going to be launching our Asia 500 here in the next 5 weeks, which will be our initial ranking of the largest online retailers in the Asia-Pacific region. Okay, so, just a few numbers to kind of warm things up. A lot of emerging markets, a lot of established markets still kind of like to benchmark against the U.S. Why is that? Well, because that was where online retailing pretty much was truly born back in 1995 when folks like Amazon.com came of age. Come a long way since then, but still, if you want to kind of take a look at how the major markets are coming together, then, if you look at Q4 projection, puts us on track for about $235.6 billion for growth in web sales in the U.S. in 2012. Europe is kind of interesting. Europe was like the U.S. back in 2007, 2008, 2009, when thanks to our housing crisis and other factors, the U.S. economy still fell off a cliff. And if you look at, the dire circumstances that happened in Europe and all the problems with the Eurozone countries and bailouts and economic downturns there, it's still very interesting where e-commerce holds up across even a stagnant economy or one that might be growing at a less than stellar rate. So if you kind of look at where last year's retail sales came in for the European retailers we measure, up by a very healthy 18.5%. And if you look at what is one of the globe's hottest markets, then actually I was talking with a gentleman right before we took the stage here, and India, as an emerging market, actually has a lot in common with Brazil and some of the countries there. And I will discuss some similarities here in just a bit, and then maybe we'll talk about a retailer or two that across the world in Brazil might not be unlike you and one of the things you're facing and some of the challenges you face as you grow into a more mature online retailing company. Okay. As I mentioned, we have been studying Asia I've been studying Asia since last June, when we first began to look at the retailers here. And some of these are numbers that I've collected. Some of these are Forrester numbers. But actually, I may have put these together more for the edification of myself, because if you look at, collectively, what is going to be the biggest region of the world driving e-commerce forward in all forms, then you look no further than the Asian landmass, the Asian continent, Asia-Pacific rim. And 2012 sales in China, and China is a market unto itself, $169.4 billion. Now, to put that in perspective, I just showed a previous slide that has the U.S. market growing by about $234 billion or total next year. To put it into perspective, inside 2 years, maybe 3 years, China will eclipse the U.S. as the world's single largest global online retail market. And arguably, they did that in less than 5 years. So that's what can happen when e-commerce really begins to gel and really begins to kind of find its place among the mainstream retailing of a particular region. Japan, despite the economic woes that Japan has, they're consistently a $64 billion market. South Korea, about $17 billion. Australia, a rather concentrated market that's still kind of going back and forth between traditional retailing chains and a lot of newcomers, but about $23.2 billion. I'm not going to say a lot about Indian online retailing because, frankly, I flew a lot of miles from Chicago in the United States to learn how you are doing and to talk with you and to begin to kind of collect and report on your growth in your market. But I thought it was interesting that Forrester did have you project as being about a $1.6 billion business in 2012. So a couple of different global stats to kind of prep us for the rest of our presentation here. Now, what I'd really like to talk about is this. What are the best and the brightest doing? And I kind of chose this topic because whether you are an established retailing market, like the U.S., a very consolidating established retail market, and Europe arguably might be the same thing. Whether you are a growing up-and-commerce market, like in India certainly is, like in Brazil definitely is, there are still a lot of things that these players have in common. So it's not unlike to think of this as actually being a global village with a lot of things in common. So, as I mentioned, we do a lot of research and rankings of retailers across various continents. And so if you dig through all of the data, and make no mistake about it, one of the reasons we can do a lot of research, and one of the reasons you're going to know everything you ever want to know about your customer, is that everything with online retailing you can measure. You can measure it from a global perspective. You can measure it from a single customer perspective. It's all analytics driven. So if you want numbers and you want to measure numbers and understand the numbers, then that's one of the benefits of online retailing, because you can measure things. So it's not quite so much what you measure, it's how you measure and then implement. So that's a bit of a broad statement, but I mentioned I'd like to kind of name drop here and there throughout my presentation. How many people have heard of an online retailing company in the U.S. called Zappos.com? Okay, who is Zappos.com, perhaps, for those who don't know it? Well, I'll start with the fun part. 3 years ago, Tony Hsieh, who, not unlike Ashish, was a former management consultant, got the crazy idea that people were actually going to buy shoes online. That was back in 1999. Well, of course they're not going to buy shoes online. You have to feel shoes. You have to see shoes. You have to put them on. You have to walk with them. Nobody is going to buy shoes online. Well, what Tony figured out, and what Tony did different, was that he pioneered the model for selling shoes online with Zappos.com. So in 1999, they did a whopping $15 million in sales. Respectable, but less than in about 15 years later, they were about a $900 million company, and now they are part of Amazon.com, and Tony sold to Amazon.com for nearly $1 billion. So there's a lot of perspective there that shows that online retailing can be a pretty leveling playing field. But back to my point. Back in 1999, the U.S. had been 4 or 5 years into online retailing, but buying shoes online still rather unheard of. So what Tony Hsieh did and what Zappos did is they brought it down to a couple of basics, the biggest of which is this: it doesn't fit, you don't like it, return it. That return is on us. We don't care whether your experience was bad. If these shoes do not fit, that does not matter. We are going to let you return those shoes to us. So how did Tony Hsieh come from being a $15 million retailer in 1999 to becoming a $1 billion retailer some 14, 15 years later? They were one of the first and best examples in the U.S. of a web-only player that looked at taking this difficult commodity of shoes and dealing with, the conventional thinking, which is you can't sell shoes online, and he figured out a way to boost sales by figuring out the customer service model. But the biggest single metric they were fanatical on was free returns. No questions. We're not going to question you. We're going to make it on us. We're going to make it right. And then from there, they made that kind of the mantra to build this very customer service driven company. And for instance, even today, Amazon will operate Zappos as a very standoff unit, if you will. Amazon will kind of leave you alone as long as you hit your margins, and they'll let you kind of keep your culture and that type of thing. And culture was very important to Zappos.com. And one of the things they did is they borrowed a page from the playbook, if you will, of McDonald's. And anybody who goes to work at Zappos, whether it's a senior vice president coming in for the first time or somebody new who's going to be working the pick, pack, and ship department, everybody spends 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, in Louisville, Kentucky, where they go through the entire learning curve of how Zappos sells because they are the ones taking the orders. They're the ones going out to the warehouse to pick, pack, and ship and learn exactly how it's done. So Zappos came across because they were the first to kind of look at a metric nobody else is looking at, free shipping returns. There's another company called Diaperscom that's owned by a company called Quidsi. And Quidsi was the same thing. They were there must be something about consultants that become entrepreneurs because it's kind of a very common theme there. Diaperscom launched in 2005, even very modest first-year sales of $5 million. But in 5 years' time, they went from $5 million to $315 million, and then they in turn sold to Amazon 2 years ago for $450 million. So another example of how a fledgling retailer did something that other online retailers, conventional retailers, ignored. They launched a site called Diaperscom. And, the Walmart's, the world's biggest, still the world's biggest retail chain, a Target, which is a very large U.S. competitor of Walmart, they had looked at selling diapers online and decided, nope, going to pass on that. It's too bulky. It's too low margin. I can't think of a way to make a decent profit on that. I pass. So, as I mentioned, the founders of Diaperscom began to look for a niche that nobody else was taking the time and trouble to look at. And after looking at, kind of the young parent, the young parenting crowd, the young family crowd, and seeing what they were looking for, they came up with two things. First off, they noticed, and they weren't exactly from, by the way, this particular industry, but they learned that the big chains were taking a pass on this low margin item, this very bulky item called diapers. They launched Diaperscom. Now, what made them go from $5 million to $300 million in 5 years' time, and then sell to Amazon for nearly $500 million to 6 years into their existing? Once again, they looked at what they could do different, and most importantly, what they did was they focused on what their competition was not doing. So these are two pretty smart MBA guys. They figured out how they could sell, price, ship diapers on a recurring basis that gave them a good enough margin to make profit, to make the business profitable. So number one, they took the time and trouble to really understand not just what their product was, they knew who was ignoring it, they know why the competition was ignoring it, and for them, they took the time and trouble to learn, by looking at shipping rates and just basic stats like this. They figure out a way to make a profit. So first thing you know, they're beginning to kind of beat the big guys by selling a commodity that they were ignoring. But most importantly, they began to identify with young parents, especially young mothers. And their core customer, of course, from day one was young mothers. And what they noticed more than anything else was that their core demographic, young mothers, was time-starved. And if you're a young mother, you certainly know all about that. And even just having 10 minutes a day where you don't have to go out and buy diapers, or you don't have to go to the same website and fill out the same order form yet one more time, even those 10 minutes became a time saver. So my point here is not only did Diaperscom begin to figure out what they're going to sell and how they're going to sell it better and more efficiently than the competition, more importantly, they really understood who their core customer is, which is young mothers, young time-starved mothers, and everything they did, from building an initial community to letting them post baby photos to all the other products that they began selling across their websites, always came down to one single mantra, which they got to know and they got to live. We are in business to save our young mothers time. And boy, did their young mothers respond. I mean, those stats are still pretty I think it's still a top 500 record for us, 15 million to 300 million in about 5 years. So once again, 2 examples of 2 web-only retailers that that went from nothing to to pretty astronomical heights simply because they did things different and took the time to learn things different than anybody else. But then there's a lot that retailers across the globe, successful ones, have in common. And the first one is called concentrating on going global. And I got to tell you, it is not just the big names that you would frequently think of that are going to become the global online retailing players. It is not only going to be Amazon. It is not only going to be Nike. It won't only be Adidas, or you can go all the way down the line with who's going to become a global player. I was around for when at least the first batch of American online retailers began to go global, and that was circa 1996, 1997. And the thinking was, well, the web is ubiquitous. I've got a product. I've got a shopping cart. I don't have to worry about the physicality of stores in Europe or Canada or Japan or any of these other markets because my web takes me everywhere. My boundaries are limitless. Well, that was somewhat naive thinking. And what Americans like ebags.com painfully learned, to the tune of maybe $70 million mistake, is that not only was it extremely hard to simply go global without being in the market you intend to go global in, but you have to think about the solution in terms of how your local customers think about shopping and understand shopping from their perspective. So that was a big mistake that a lot of the online U.S. retailers made their first pact at going global 10 years ago. So there was a big hullabaloo, a lot of hype for 2 years about becoming global. Then it all went away because there are a lot of failed examples of how not to do it. Well, some players stuck with it. How many people are familiar with Este Lauder Cosmetics? Okay. If I can think of one company that is doing probably one of the best all-around jobs of selling to a global audience, it's Este Lauder. And it does not matter that they're a global brand manufacturer, and it does not simply matter that they've got brand awareness with all types of cosmetics and this type of thing. What really set Este Lauder apart is they began to do things that gained them efficiencies of scale. Well, for one thing, there are the technology that enables you to go overseas, the currency converters, the shipping tables, those types of things. I mean, the cost of that began to plummet, some 5 or 6 years ago. So not only did the technology become more ubiquitous, it became very affordable. So next thing you know, whether or not you're a big retailer versus a small retailer, you have the same technology that would enable you to go global versus using your platform. So technology was one factor, but that was not the case that drove Este Lauder to be what I would consider one of the best examples of a global retailer. What they did is they sell in 94 different countries, and every single website, of course, the back end is ubiquitous. The back end, they've got economies of scale. They've had 10 years of IT people to consolidate all of that. So of course they've got a streamlined platform. They've got systems integration. They've got all the technology onto one platform. Of course, that took them some time to do that. More importantly, what an Este Lauder learned and perfected is, they began to truly understand, who their customers were in various countries. So the fact that their customers in Denmark hate email, and the fact their customers in Germany love to pay for the most part at home when the product arrives, they give that to them. They understand that. They took the time to make 94 global markets into 94 individual markets connected to one platform, but they understand the customer. So my point is, I could quote several small retailers, 15, 20 million, that are doing very well with going global, not because they now building out mobile commerce. The world changed 2 years ago, as far as I'm concerned. I've been writing about online retailing since 1999. So, I can kind of talk about the first 10, 15 years, and then the model changed. Okay, why is the model changed, and how did it change? Well, if you want ancient history, the first generation of e-commerce was the Amazons of the world. It was PC driven. It was driven to my catalog. My site taxonomy is structured in a way that benefits me, doesn't benefit you, but I control the experience. You come here, here's my shopping cart. So the first 10, 15 years of online retailing was built by that particular model. In fact, there are some hardcore traditionalists, mostly chain retailers, that still think of it in that model. If you think of a company who is probably not going to be around for the foreseeable future that still clings to that model, think of JCPenney. JCPenney, a very large, mostly women's apparel chain. Technically, they're mass merchant in the United States, but JCPenney, had this huge cataloging business. They converted it to kind of a PC infrastructure early on, and we used to write about how big and how bad online retailing sales were growing, if you will, for JCPenney. Now, JCPenney has lost a third of its online business. They just simply can't change fast enough with the times, and they missed some key opportunities. My point there is they took too long to cling to the first generation of e-commerce, which was PC-driven, and I control the experience. My customer comes to my site. Yes, my analytics dictate where that retailer is, where that customer is going, but I structure this. I control this. I will tell the customer, and I'll give them some feedback, tell them where to go, how to shop, and then, at the end of the day, I've got your business. What has changed, though, is it's not just mobile growing expositionally, if you will, in countries like the United States, where it's taking off. What's happening is in markets like Brazil, and I'll bet you if I came back here in maybe 3 or 4 years' time, I would be looking at a similar experience. Brazil, not unlike India, a burgeoning middle class, more smartphones getting into consumers' hands, more populace looking to do all kinds of things with their smartphone. In Brazil, 5 years ago, there was nothing in the way of a truly established traditional information technology, telecommunications infrastructure. Brazil said, forget all that. What they did is they went strictly for mobile. They built up a mobile infrastructure over the course of 5 years as their economy was growing at, say, 8, 9, 10% a year, as they became to grow into the world's 7th largest economy, I believe. And along with that rise in mobile commerce, or if you will, mobile technology and the infrastructure for that, came this entire growth of online retailers that are suddenly in business. And next thing you know, there's a company like a Netshoes.com. And if you want to take a look at a good website and a good model to study, I would look at Netshoes.br, because that will give you a very good example of how an online retailer is putting together a successful shopping experience across mobile, across tablet, across PC in an emerging market like a Brazil. So not everything will be applicable to India, but one of the things that Netshoes did early on was they realized they had to go out and capture the mobile shopper. So mobile commerce, I would argue, is certainly age-driven. Pretty much doesn't matter what continent you're on, you're going to have a whole generation coming your way that they don't phone, they text. They don't email, they text. They don't speak on the phone, they live on social media. So if you're looking to see, one of the two game changers between now and going forward is the entire rise of first mobile commerce and now social marketing and social commerce has changed the entire dynamic of online retailing. it does not matter what the market is, the entire dynamics have changed. The experience has gone from I, the retailer, control the experience to I, the customer, control the experience. And so we do a lot of writing about retailers across a lot of walks of life, across a lot of market sizes, that what they're doing very well is they're understanding that the new world order of online retailing is driven most effectively by those retailers who understand my customers control the experience. And what I build suits them, does not suit me. So what do some of the online players globally have in common? Well, they're going global. I mentioned that. They are building out mobile commerce. And next, we'll talk about social media marketing and commerce in just a bit here. But another trait that truly best practice online retailers, no matter the market, are doing is they're really beginning to figure out more of what social media is, and more importantly, how they can leverage that across a variety of fronts for their customers. In other words, it's not just a Facebook page. They're figuring out every tool that Facebook has in the toolbox, and they're figuring out a way to connect with those tools with their customer. Those companies have that in common. And most importantly, they are looking for opportunity, and they are looking for partners. We put on a very large online retailing show ourselves. It's called we call it IRCE. And next June in Chicago, we're going to welcome 10,000 visitors from 35 countries to come here. 222 speakers talk about various things with online retailing. And we actually have a track called Amazon and Me. And I bring up that example because we get calls every day at Internet Retailer, which is, how can I compete against Amazon? How do I compete against these big established companies? I just see where company A merged with company B, and how do I compete with that? Well, maybe it's the help desk. Maybe I'm Ann Landers. Maybe I'm Dear Abby. I don't know. But we get calls like that quite a bit. And the first thing we mention is, well, relax. You're not going to compete with Amazon. Maybe here you are. It's still an emerging market. Oddly enough, if you look at who the top 5 players in Latin America e-commerce are, number 1 is not Amazon. Number 5 is Amazon. Amazon just launched their Kindle and some digital product for Brazil. They are not moving into Brazil just yet. That's the one market they're being a little more cautious. But if you look at the more consolidated and mature parts of e-commerce, Amazon has long since been number 1 online retail U.S., will continue to be. In fact, our CEO, Jack Love, who just loves these numbers, he did a forecast where he's got, if you look at, both Amazon and Walmart stores are publicly traded companies in the U.S., and he looked at 15 years of financial data for Walmart and then 15 years of financial data for Amazon.com, and he projected ahead for 10 years based upon past financial history. And guess who we figure is going to be the largest retailer in the world in 10 years? And I'll give you a clue. It's not Walmart. It's Amazon. So that is just the power of what Amazon's doing. So my point to a lot of people who call is, I say relax. You're not going to beat them. But what can you do? We do a summer publication we call the Second 500. And I love that publication because what we do is we talk to who we think are the up-and-comers or the best niche merchants, folks not unlike yourself if you're a smaller, kind of newer company in the U.S., and we rank them on their sales. But more importantly, we try and tell their story of what makes them different and why they are kind of an emerging leader. And it comes down to they look for opportunity within their niche. They look for partners who understand their niche, be it technology, be it financial, be it marketing. They look for partners that are going to help them grow that. And there are a lot of niche retailers, even in these old consolidating mature markets. They're doing quite fine because they have the product expertise, they have the product knowledge, and they've built their entire e-commerce experience around their knowledge of their product and their customer. And in the new world order of mobile and social, they figured out how to bring their expertise to the next generation who wants to shop how they want, when they want, and they're not just going to be at the office or at home on their PC. So these are 3, 4, 5 things that I think kind of defy markets, if you were. So if you're looking for somewhat general ways to differentiate but still be there, for the long run, I'd say those are 4 or 5 of the good ones. Now, where is mobile commerce headed? So, it's I don't study mobile as well in Europe or in Latin America, and certainly not Asia as I do in the U.S. But if you look at the fact that online sales for our Mobile 400 are up 98.6% to about 20.6 billion. Now that's a little misleading because half of that is eBay. And eBay has made it very clear that when it comes to mobile commerce, we want to be the Amazon. And arguably, when they're growing at, when they're putting up 10, 11 billion a year in mobile commerce, it's kind of hard to talk about. So to put some things into perspective, in the U.S., mobile is now 9.2% of all U.S. e-commerce sales. A little bit less, if you will, for Europe. Certainly somewhat higher than 9.2% for emerging markets like Brazil, where it's all mobile driven. So my point in bringing up that fact is that my last point here when it comes to mobile commerce, and why am I bringing this up here, because part of what is going to help you excel, whether your market is India or China, the U.S. or Europe, it does not matter. What's going to help you excel is that we see the U.S. market and what's happening with mobile as being a harbinger for how mobile commerce and the expectation consumers in various markets have for mobile commerce as a harbinger of things to come. I mean, to put that 9.2% of total U.S. e-commerce into perspective, we have only been charting mobile sales for the better part of 3 years. I mean, just 3 years ago, less than 1%. So in less than 3 years' time, in our core market of the U.S., you can see what effect mobile commerce begins to have on those kinds of numbers. And $21 billion across a market is not exactly just small change, as it were. That's a very significant indicator, I think, of one of the prime directives, if you will, of e-commerce today, which is the model, once again, is not you come to my site, I control the experience. The experience has left you. Your customer controls that. And if you use mobile and understand mobile as a way to kind of figure out as part of your business model, I think that's where one of the reasons you come ahead. So I had a couple of mobile questions coming into the show here today. So what do mobile commerce leaders have in common? And once again, I can be somewhat ubiquitous across the 4 or 5 markets that we study. For 2 things, they have a dual strategy, and you may not have it yet, but you're going to have it, which is you've got kind of a dual strategy for smartphone, and you've got it for tablets. And it's a somewhat different audience in the U.S. The tablets, a year ago, just a year ago, when we did our first ranking of the biggest mobile players in the U.S., tablets were not part of the discussion. Just like 2 years prior to that, smartphones were not prior to the discussion. Mobile was not happening. In 2 years' time, along comes the smartphone. A year later, along comes the tablet. And it's exciting to talk with retailers, especially, let's say, in Europe and the U.S., because if you ask them, okay, do you guys have a tablet strategy? How's your tablet business doing? Boy, they love to talk about that. Why do they love to talk about it? Because even if they don't have a mobile site, mobile apps, tablet apps, what they've been finding is that 10%, 12%, 15% of their total traffic now comes from some type of mobile device, and maybe half that, 7-8% of total traffic now to a site suddenly comes from tablet. What's exciting there? These 2 technologies did not exist 3 years ago. That's how fast mobile is rapidly changing. And so if you kind of look at what the retailing leaders of mobile kind of have in common, it boils down to a kind of a 4 or 5 here. They understand smartphones and they understand tablet strategies. So analytics has a huge role to play in both of those. we talk with, we've got 2 reporters who do nothing but cover mobile commerce every single day. And, if you look for some commonalities of what they have in the stories that they produce about, so-and-so is doing this well, this retailer has this aspect of mobile doing well, you kind of get around to asking, okay, well then what's driving this? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to come back and they're going to say, well, we did this with our technology. We did this with our app. We did this with our user experience because we looked at the analytical data per device and per operating system. And we understood, and we know, and we track, and we care, and we change how our iPhone shoppers come to us, how our tablet shoppers come to us, how the Android folks come to us. So my point is, one best practice is a lot of retailers that are doing exceptionally well with mobile are extremely attentive to really looking at the historical trends from what their analytics report shows them. And that can tell you a lot of interesting data that I can tell you for a fact has driven a lot of growth to very forward-thinking online retailers. So, and then a couple of other things that are just somewhat basic retailing. A lot of retailers in the U.S. and Europe that are doing pretty well with mobile, they'll tell you, you got to keep that guy coming back, daily deals, some type of incentive, something that's going to offer them the way to keep that guy coming back. Another thing, fast search. 4th thing, ease of use. When e-commerce began coming of age 2 years ago, a lot of retailers that we used to write about kind of went crazy. They began to basically replicate every single thing on their traditional e-commerce site into their mobile site, thinking that the customer has to have the exact same user experience on my traditional site, my mobile site. So that thinking is kind of changing because what they really want is ease of use. What they want is a daily deal. What they want is fast search. What they want is apps that are adaptable to them. First generation apps were pretty much how retailers thought of the we control the experience type of thing. They may have launched a commerce-enabled app, but it mirrored how they thought shoppers were shopping their traditional e-commerce site. Not the case. Apps, app technology is not nearly as expensive today as it was, say, just 2-3 years ago. So a lot of people are spending a lot of time, coming up with new and now better versions of the apps, and they're letting their customers know about it. But more importantly, once again, they're studying the app behavior between the tablet user and the smartphone user and tailoring the experience to those particular people. Okay. Social media. A couple of quick stats. We literally just ranked the largest social media players for the very first time. In fact, our publication came out not more than 2 weeks ago. Kind of fascinating. And what we found is we looked at kind of the 300 biggest social media brands, retailers, if you will, in the U.S., and we ranked them on percent of traffic that comes to their site, from, at least in the U.S., kind of the three major players, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And what's significant about that 4.25% is that that's total traffic. That was traffic that was not coming from these sources a year ago. So that shows you that 4.25%. Bet you I'm back here next year or in previous years telling you it's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14%. That's how fast a game changer, these Facebook channels and Twitter outlets and whatnot are becoming for what's driving traffic to your site. And I think social media will evolve differently in different markets. But you know what? This is how people communicate today, younger generation. It's going to be ubiquitous. So understand how your traffic is coming from social, your game ahead. Now, a stat. We added up the entire social media 300 and we came up with $1.6 billion in total sales. To put that into perspective, that is only 1% of total U.S. e-commerce sales for last year. Paltry. Yeah, I know. But if you talk with a jackthreads.com, if you talk with a petflow.com, if you talk with some of these retailers that have really taken the time and trouble to understand how to use Facebook and Twitter in ways that put them ahead of the competition, but more importantly, they understand how their customers are using this, they will tell you that That 1.6 billion in collective sales represents the sales I am getting from my best, most engaged customers. And there is a company called Coastal Contacts. They operate a website called coastal.com. They sell contact lenses. They sell eyeglasses. And they are one of the companies that did about $30 million in online retailing sales from social last year. So the 30 million, you know, the CEO likes that number. That's not what excites him. Over the course of 2 Facebook campaigns, he will tell you that they gained 1 million new customers. 2 campaigns. You can take 10 years of paid search, 10 years of email marketing, 10 years of affiliate marketing, and you are not going to have that kind of metric that gets you 1 million customers over the course of 2 campaigns. Now, I could go into some detail about how they achieved that 1 million. I'm happy to kind of tell you that tale when I'm through here. But in short order, what they did is they began to understand to use Facebook promotional tools in ways that they were kind of the case study for Facebook on a couple of things. So they really got into understanding how their customers were using Facebook and learned all kinds of valuable lessons and became students of the channel. And that's what they're going to tell you where the sales came from. Okay, so just a couple of quick things on what do the world's best retailers have in common for any type of social network. Well, first off, they use Facebook or the equivalent to engage their best customers. These are the people who are excited about your brand. They just bought something. They found something. They want to refer it. So you figure out, like a Coastal Contacts did, that we can use these tools to reach our best customers, and that's something a lot of traditional chain retailers in Europe and the U.S. still do not understand. Secondly, Twitter, frankly, is the new face of customer service. Don't hide behind it. If somebody has a Twitter feed, if somebody twitters and says, I had a bad experience, or I did not receive my order the day you promised, well, Twitter is becoming the new customer service tool that puts online retailers in, yes, the light of your customers, but it also showcases you as to having a best-in-class, first-class customer service tool. And I can tell you that retailers that are truly understanding Twitter as a customer service tool and not just a way to promote and market to their customers are coming out leaders in social commerce. Frankly, lastly, social media, social commerce, it is offense, not defense. Chain retailers, a lot of big chain retailers in the States, yeah, they're on Facebook. Yeah, they've got 5 employees doing Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, all that. But they think about it from, I control the brand. I control the experience. I'm trying to control my name and how customers out there are reacting to me. Well, that's very conventional thinking for a very new and unconventional medium. So the leaders in social media and social commerce aren't being defensive, they're being offensive. They're getting like these niche retailers I just spoke about because they're understanding that social media is the new way people communicate. They understand that social media is word-of-mouth advertising on an instant global scale nothing else is going to reach, and they are figuring out ways to reach who they think are their most engaged customers. Okay, so that brings me to my conclusion. I once again am truly excited to have been here today. I hope I have had some perspective that you would find useful to your particular business, and I would encourage you, give me a call. My number is there. My email is there. We talk with retailers all day long. Happy to hear from you. So we might wind up telling your story in a news story, or more importantly, got a question, got a comment, give us a call, and we'll see if we can help you. Thank you.